Brooklyn Nine-Nine was considered by some to be a show that shouldn't have succeeded, but it did, getting a good amount of seasons and episodes. Across 8 seasons, we have 153 episodes, and I took to collecting all of them on a document, finding out each episode's star rating on IMDb, and ranking the highest rated ones from my least favorite to my favorite. So we will begin with number 8. Jake Peralta, the show's primary protagonist, is drunk at a bar before revealing to a stranger next to him that he had just been fired from the NYPD. I honestly had a mini heart attack when he said that, but we cut to a full week earlier to find out exactly what happened to get to this moment. Jake's story is also intertwined with his best friend Charles's story. He has just broken up with Vivian, his ex-fiancée. This storyline continues with Jake as the time in the week moves, so I'll get Charles out of the way. He's just trying to get over the breakup for the entire episode, but gets injured while the others try to help him out in various ways. Anyway, Jake is confronted by Holt, his captain, and other superior for harassing Lucas Wint, whom Jake believes is laundering money for a gang. But he's told to stop it before he goes too far and jeopardizes his career. Unfortunately, Jake doesn't listen, and tricks Amy, a fellow detective, into following Wint around with him. They get caught, and Jake gets brought up on charges and specs, which just means he's being accused of misconduct, in this case, harassment. Amy strangely agrees with Jake that they should continue to look into Wint, but they aren't able to do this as Jake gets put on administrative leave. But a few hours before the hearing, Jake convinces Holt to trust him, after getting very concrete proof that Wint is definitely laundering money, and the evidence they need is in a logbook in the Wint Community Center. So, they have to act fast as the team can only stall for so long. With a warrant in hand to search the community center, they have to go undercover at the dance competition taking place to sneak upstairs to get into Wint's office where the book is. Jake and Amy dance around, and this is kind of important as Jake likes Amy, but Amy is dating someone else, Teddy, an officer from another precinct. But this is more relevant later. As they run out of time, Amy distracts one of the security guards by the staircase on the dance floor, letting Jake get up to the office and taking a picture of the logbook, finally getting their evidence. Though, after all of that, and getting to the hearing, Holt tells Jake to trust him, and later, Jake is fired after proving he has no evidence of his claims against Wint. This is part of a much larger plan, though, because Wint has connections to a crime family, the Inuchi crime family, and Jake gets asked to go undercover to take them down from the inside. He accepts the task immediately, so YOLO, I guess. It's literally Jake's unspoken motto at this point in the show. So Jake heads off to his undercover mission, but before he does, he confesses his feelings to Amy, saying he wishes something romantic could happen between them, but he knows that it can't because Amy's already in a relationship with Teddy. And we come full circle. Jake at the bar telling the stranger next to him that he got fired. And we learn the stranger is a member of the Inuchi crime family. So this was all planned from the start to get Jake brought into the family. As this episode was the first season's finale, I thought I was going to like it more, but the other episodes on this list were just better in my opinion. But I see why this episode is widely enjoyed by a majority of the audience. It has good tension, a ticking clock, and a nice twist at the end. And again, it gave me a mini heart attack because I was not prepared for Jake to say that he got fired. I won't say much about this episode as it is a Halloween heist-style episode, which just means that the group splits into teams to get a valuable object to be seen as the ultimate human/genius. These heist-style episodes started in Season 1, with Jake claiming he would be an amazing thief and Holt telling him he would definitely get caught. Each heist episode has a wild amount of twists, and I would recommend that you watch them for yourselves. I don't want to spoil too much, because the excitement of watching a heist episode for the first time is akin to the excitement my little monkey brain has to watching a heist movie. And I love heist movies, like Mission Impossible, and I love the hell out of those films. Tangent aside, I like this episode, but not as much as the other heist episodes, as it's in the same season as my favorite episode in the whole show, Ticking Clocks, but that would be for another video. Anyway, without too many spoilers, this episode is just as crazy and full of twists and turns as the other episodes like it. And who you think might win clearly doesn't win. Who wins is actually crazy, and the plan they put together to win is crazy and as complicated as the episodes that came before it. This is the show's finale. I feel like I'd be spoiling too much if I got too much into detail, but as a season finale, a lot of older characters make a return. Teddy, the one CSI tech from a few episodes, but only in a flashback, and the beloved fan favorite Maleepnos. This episode, though, is the second part. In the first part, we learn of Jake's plan to have his perfect goodbye to the 9-9, as he wants to move on from being a detective to be a stay-at-home dad for his and Amy's son, Mac, who was born at the end of the last season. But as any heist episode would go, nothing goes according to anyone's plan, and you would literally never guess who wins the heist, as it is so outlandish. I feel like the writers were on something when they wrote it. But no spoilers, because you should definitely watch this, be it the show, this episode, or just the final season. It's good. Honestly, for the longest time, the show was in limbo, and we didn't know if we were getting a season after season 7 because of COVID. So I kind of thought I'd have this episode higher up on the list, but like with Cinco de Mayo, there are just some better episodes in the season and on my list. This was honestly a great episode to end the series off with, especially with the end, where they bring everyone back from another Halloween heist with everyone in their new roles. Terry as captain of the 9-9, Amy as chief of the police reform program, Holt becoming deputy commissioner, Rosa continuing her career as a private investigator, and Jake happily raising Mac as a stay-at-home dad. This is a nice send-off to a good show. It definitely didn't become like a few other shows like it. By that I mean dragging it out for too long after the show hit its peak. This episode made all Peraltiago shippers scream. How do I know that? Because I did. I screamed, especially when they kissed. This episode has a basic 9-9 plot, Charles trying to get Rosa to a birthday party, Jake and Amy tracking down an identity thief, and Holt, Gina, and Terry looking to undermine Madeline Wunsch, who is trying to move Holt out of the 9-9 to a public relations office. So when this episode went in the direction it did, I was so excited. Jake being awkward with Amy about her saying she doesn't want to date cops after breaking up with Teddy, Amy being awkward around him because, as we learn at the end of a previous episode, she does the double tuck, which is just something she does when she likes someone. So this episode was a culmination of a ton of stuff. Wunsch and Holt's rivalry, the slow burn plot between Jake and Amy, and the friendship between Charles and Rosa. But anyway, Jake and Amy are paired up for their mission to follow their identity thief, catch him, and the person who bought the stolen identities. They think this mission will be cut and dry, but the thief goes into a fancy restaurant that they also have to go into to keep an eye on him. So they end up posing as a couple, a newly engaged couple, to get in, and end up kissing several times to keep their cover. In the end, after Holt reveals he's parting ways with the 9-9, Jake and Amy end up alone to talk, before kissing, for reals this time. It ends with them going to meet their new captain. This episode was the start of something great, a long, loving relationship between Jake and Amy. So this was a great episode that I totally have no bias towards in any way. Trust me on this one. In a world of lights, electricity, and power, when the lights go out, we descend into chaos, just like New York during this episode. After the whole power grid in their part of New York goes out under mysterious circumstances, Jake and Charles have to go figure out what's wrong, while Amy, pregnant and ready to pop any second, along with Rosa, must help to keep the precinct in working order and help New York from crumbling without power. Holt and Terry are also trapped in an elevator, and it can't run without power after all, and are out of commission for the foreseeable future. In this elevator, we learn of Holt's fear of elevators because of a moment from his childhood, learning to do maintenance checks on elevators every 4 years. So, to calm him down, Terry teaches Holt how to dance, something Terry used to do for his younger siblings when his dad got loud when he was fighting with their mom. Charles and Jake are working hard to figure out what's going on with the power, eventually finding the guy, seemingly drunk, crash into a main transformer, causing the blackout. But they find out that he did it on purpose, so a bunch of thieves could rob the bank under the cover of darkness and chaos. During all this, Amy goes into labor. Jake thinks she's at the hospital, but she is still stuck at the precinct, so they're going in the wrong direction, and Charles must face his greatest enemy, Peanut Butter the horse, to get Jake to Amy in time. After giving birth in the precinct and being distracted by a dance performance, courtesy of Terry and Holt, they then move to the hospital. It is here we learn the name they chose for their baby, Mac, like John McClane, as Jake is a diehard fan. This episode for a while was the show finale, technically, as we didn't have a lot of info because, again, of COVID, halting the production of the show. And if this episode happened to be the show's finale, I wouldn't have complained. It would have been a nice end, and we could have just assumed they'd juggled kids and work. So it was a good episode all around. When this show goes into deeper topics, I think for the most part it does it well, balancing the humor but also taking the topic as seriously as it should be taken, like officers abusing their power over a minority, racial profiling, and the way that some people don't think it's wrong to be a bad person and not change because they've apologized. Terry is the unfortunate victim of a bad cop using his powers in a way he shouldn't, detaining Terry in front of his own house, right where his two young daughters could have seen it all happen. And all of this happens because he went out looking for a little blanket his daughters love, Moo Moo. Jake and Amy also get involved. They tell Cagney and Lacey, Terry's daughters, that sometimes bad people do bad things to good people, but that their dad is a good man who loves them. Terry even attempts to have the officer apologize, but it doesn't go as well, as he thinks he's done nothing wrong, and that Terry should have just had his badge on him, and none of it would have happened if he did. In an attempt to file a formal complaint against this officer, Terry goes to Holt, who says he shouldn't because it could put his application for a higher position in jeopardy. Despite everything Terry went through, Holt tries to justify his stance, telling Terry that he should just wait until he is in a higher position. But later Holt says the reasoning came from a place of hurt, as when he was just a regular beat cop, he was bullied and belittled by his peers and superiors. Unlike Terry, Holt just took it and waited for the moment he got so he could prove to those who mocked him that they were wrong and that he was a capable officer. With Holt admitting this, he files the complaint for Terry so he can get justice, because that's the reason why he became a captain, so he could protect the people he worked with and the people under him, the way his superiors didn't. I love this episode for many reasons. It has an amazing balance between the serious moments and the humor, something they could have messed up, either leaning into the humor too much and not taking a serious topic seriously enough and treating it with the respect it needs, or giving the audience tonal whiplash from the comedy in the last episode and other episodes. If you look up stakes in the dictionary, you'll find this episode, because holy crap, this episode has some stakes. For the last few episodes, we have been learning about a man named Jimmy the Butcher Figgis. He has a large gang and has sent someone to kill Adrian Pimento, Rosa's fiance, as Adrian once worked for him undercover. This episode is a culmination of the past few episodes. We have built up to this moment for 4 of them at this point, and this episode does not disappoint. We are introduced to a new character, someone from Holt's past, Bob Anderson, a man in the FBI who says he can help them take Figgis down, but he just so happens to be one of the 2 people Figgis has in the FBI, so you could probably guess where this could go. At the same time of the New York team trying not to get caught by Figgis's men and getting out of a hospital while it's on lockdown, Charles and Amy are trying to get back to New York after Amy finished her undercover mission at a prison. They are also an integral part of the plan to get Bob to give up the location of the real Figgis file that he swapped out when they broke into the FBI to get it earlier. After many unsuccessful attempts to get Bob to talk, it seems Figgis has found them in Rosa's apartment. And with Rosa having limited space in her panic room, they opt to leave Bob out, but he confesses where the file is, so Jake and Rosa remain out of the panic room so Bob can take their place. But not as all as it seems. Charles and Amy were the ones to be a part of this deception with a fake sniper, all so Bob would give up where the file was, and with the real file found, Figgis's operations begin to disrupt as the people working for Figgis are being arrested. But this is far from over, as Figgis knows it's Jake and Holt who did this, and he threatens them. So, as the 2 offered Bob a name change and a little home in Florida before, they are now Greg and Larry for their own safety. This season finale has to be one of the best in the show, and it wasn't standalone, but it was also part of a much larger story, but not as a part 1 or a part 2, which I like. And I never expected for this episode to go in the direction that it did, which is why I've been a little vague about certain things, just in case you want to watch it. This episode is amazing, and I debated whether I should tell too much about it because it's that good. But in the short form, Jake and Holt are interrogating someone they know to be a murderer. He just won't confess. The whole time, as the audience, we know where this episode is going, but the way that it is executed is amazing. Jake and Holt episodes are always the best, especially when it goes into the relationship and the dynamic they had up until this point. But they never go, and here's the spoiler part, if you want to know what happens a little deeper. To go over the major points in this episode, Jake wants to interrogate by himself, but Holt eventually convinces him that he could be of use, so they work together. Most of their interrogation tactics don't go as well. Good cop, bad cop, smart cop, dumb cop, and Jake's wonderful guitar playing skills can't even make this guy talk. But during one attempt, Philip mocks Jake and implies Holt doesn't trust him to be competent enough to get a confession. So, in a rage, Jake lies to Philip, claiming the neighbor next to the house that the body was found, a place Philip visited often in the Pine Barrens, saw him that night of the murder dumping a body, but Philip says the guy is dead, and that seems to be it for Jake. But Holt telling Jake something, sometimes they don't get a confession after the lawyer showed up, saying that they'll be leaving in 8 minutes, but in that conversation, Holt says something that Jake knows he can use and rushes in, and I'm just gonna let this play out.
Any questions?
That's okay, I have no questions. That's right. I'm about to monologue, son.
You better make it quick. You only got 8 minutes.
All right, then let me paint you a picture. I'm Philip, a successful periodontist that's become addicted to diazepam, a sedative I take because I'm junkie scum. Also, for real, addiction is a disease I would be super empathetic if you hadn't murdered a man.
What is the point of this?
I'll get there. So, one day I'm working late when my boss Robert surprises me. He found out I was stealing meds. Again, junkie scum. Also, again, not your fault, there's a major genetic component to addiction. He says he's gonna file a police report. I could lose my license. We fight and something in me just snaps. So I grab the first thing I can find and I hit him with it.
You still have no murder weapon.
I do now. Here's a pic I found on Yelp of the surgical suite 6 months ago, and here's a shot that our crime scene photographer took of the same room 2 weeks after the murder. Notice any differences?
We're not answering that.
That's all right, I can just tell you myself. The Yelp shot has 6 of these heavy-looking glass awards from the Brooklyn Periodontic Society in the background, whereas this shot only has 5. What happened to number 6? You murdered Robert with it.
I didn't.
You lost all control and you bludgeoned him to death. There must have been blood everywhere, but you got lucky. You were in the surgical suite. It can be sterilized. You never would have gotten away with it in your carpeted office.
That's not what happened.
Don't say anything more, Philip.
And your office manager would have heard all of the screaming, but she was at her grandson's play. Lucky again.
You're wrong.
You put Robert's body into a wheelchair and shoved it in the elevator. It's a miracle there wasn't blood everywhere.
That's not true.
Now you're in the garage with a corpse. You panicked and left your phone in your office, and you don't have your car keys, but Robert's are in his pocket, so you put him in his car and you take off.
No.
You can't believe what you've done.
No.
Philip.
You're flustered, you have no GPS, so you just start driving.
No.
Philip.
Next thing you know, you're in the Pine Barrens and it hits you. Your uncle's cabin. He has a place there. You're the luckiest son of a
It wasn't luck.
Yes, it was. You got lucky at every turn.
No. I knew exactly where I was driving. I left my phone in the office on purpose. I was in a surgical suite by design, and I didn't use some glass award that any idiot would clearly see was missing. I made a rod out of a special dental polymer, killed him with it, then melted it back down. It's already in a patient's mouth, son.
Jake says that Philip, like himself, needed to be seen as smart, and it killed him that Jake said he was lucky, sloppy, and compulsive with all of his decision-making. Now this episode is number 1, mostly because Ticking Clocks wasn't one of the top episodes of its season, so number 1 by default is not a bad place to hold. So that's all of them. Tell me what you think of my placements, and tell me your favorite episode. I love when people tell me their favorite episode so we can talk about it. Anyway, that's the video.
Bye-bye now.